It is Thursday. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome back on into the Taking the Point show. Don't worry, I was texting Coach Jay this morning. He's out on the golf course. He's actually going to join us one night next week. And then you guys, as we mentioned yesterday, he's going to come back, roll football season next year. One of my favorite guests that we've had, on in the past year of content joins me today. Lead producer, in one of the many great voices of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Mikey McNuggets himself. Mikey, happy Thursday. Appreciate you joining us, man.
What's up, Grant? Hey, I just noticed this, but we go from your real brick background to my very fake animated brick background back in downtown Cleveland. So a little gray, little red combo, but we got the Ohio State brick here to show off for the people tonight.
Unfortunately, mine is not real. It is fake.
Join the Not Real Brick Squad. Let's go. Let's go.
Yes, we are on the Not Real Brick Squad. But again, Mikey, appreciate you joining, man. Happy to have you with us. As you guys know, as always, we're powered by BetJack Ohio Sportsbook. Today's offer happens to be a golf profit boost of 25%. So if you're feeling like placing some golf, go ahead, tap in, sign up there, scan that QR code. Tons of offers for new signups, bonus bets, you name it. But again, as you guys know, we're daily live content. You guys have been enjoying it, requesting it. So here we are. We're previewing the slate. Some of the college basketball games start at 6:30. And I got to say, my Ohio State Buckeyes, look, the season was rough with Chris Holtmann, but here we are with Jake Diebler. We're winning games. Mikey, have you been following Ohio State? I got to give them the credit, man. They are rolling right now.
Not close enough to give you any kind of in-depth, deep analysis you can't find from just kind of anybody on Twitter. But I will say, after seeing how porous they had played, to come back and beat Purdue in Coach Diebler's debut, to come back and beat the Spartans on a buzzer beater like that, it is pretty impressive to see any team, especially when you're dealing with a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, respond to change in that manner and know, or at least to know, our backs are against the wall. If we don't kind of come together real quick, our season's going to be over way earlier than we would like. And to see him put together some wins like this, it has been fun to watch the last couple of weeks. But I'll be honest, Grant, Ohio State basketball for the majority of this season, I could not get into it. It was a tough watch.
And I don't blame you. And it was, a lot of it was due to Chris Holtmann. But again, I mean, I was at the Purdue game in Columbus, not the buzzer beater. They just won the game by 4. The Michigan State on the road. They hadn't won a road game in 17 straight games. They got it done.
That long?
17 straight road games. They couldn't get it done. Yeah. And it
took. What was the atmosphere, real quick, at the Purdue game?
Man, it was electric.
Okay, good.
It was not only his debut. Obviously, it was Purdue. They were the second-ranked team in the nation at the time. And, I mean, watching games all year, the stands were not full, but they were full for that game. And we got a successful court storming in there before all the narratives have changed now about court stormings. But it was a lot of fun. So they play Nebraska tonight. I know at BetJack we've taken some heavy action on them. They're actually favorites. Nebraska is a wagon at home. They're 17-1 on the road. Nebraska is 2-7. So they're a night and day different team. But let's get in. I have a fun game for Mikey. Mikey and UCSS crew always play fun games. So we're going to get into it. I've got 5 players, right? NFL, It is related around NFL. NFL free agency is coming up. It is rapidly approaching. We got some franchise tag guys. It is combine day. We've got 5 guys. We're going to play a game called Guess Their Next Team. Let's put the first one on the board, Peter. It is none other than Kirk Cousins. And this is a guy, as we know, he's the unfortunate Achilles injury. He was absolutely balling with Justin Jefferson this past season, having almost probably what was statistically a career year. A lot of controversy around him. Are they going to bring him back? Is he going to go to Atlanta? Is he going to go somewhere else? Mikey, I'm going to let you lead off on all 5 of these. First one, number 1, guess Kirk Cousins' team next season.
I think it'll be the team we just saw him in a uniform of during that picture. I understand he has a market, and I think he'll be a hot commodity, but we heard Kevin O'Connell yesterday from the Combine talk about how much they value Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk, I don't know if you watched the quarterback documentary over the summer, Grant, but it seemed like Kirk and Minnesota was a perfect fit. His family seems very comfortable in Minneapolis. And if you're Kirk Cousins, if you look at the landscape of the NFL, how many teams are not picking at the top of the draft that have a massive need at quarterback, that also have some weapons like Justin Jefferson that you can throw to? I think Pittsburgh might be the only other team I guess you could call Las Vegas that in that category as well. But I'd be surprised. I think there's going to be some quarterback movement on other guys, but I think Kirk Cousins ends up staying in Minnesota.
I'm with you there. It was fun. We were talking with Max Loeb yesterday. There's Atlanta in the picture there, but I'm with you. I think Kirk Cousins stays, and I think they find a way to retain Justin Jefferson as well. And those two reunite and ball out next year because, again, they had all the momentum in the world last year before Kirk Cousins went down. Next one is one that you might not think of on the surface, but he is an absolute stud. Peter, here it is. Number 2, Austin Eckler. As you guys know, he is a fantastic running back out of LA. Not only out of the backfield, but pass catching back. He's fantastic, and that's a weapon. So, Mikey, where are you going with Austin Eckler?
So my initial thought was Houston. And I think Houston will be involved in this free agent running back veteran market. But I actually think Houston will pursue Saquon Barkley a little more than they'll pursue Austin Eckler. I'm not sure if Barkley's coming up on this list. So because I'm going to save that Houston running back spot for a different running back, I think there's a good chance Eckler ends up in Cincinnati in the pass-happy Bengals offense. And I think that's actually kind of a scary thought for Browns fans and the Browns defense. Now, Eckler is not the same Austin Eckler from a few seasons ago. I think he hit the running back cliff this most recent season. With the Chargers, he was not as explosive. His numbers across the board were down, but I also don't think it was fully Eckler's fault. That whole Chargers offense was dysfunctional. Their whole coaching staff is gone. Enter Jim Harbaugh. And I think in a pass-happy offense that's centered around kind of quick passing game from Joe Burrow, you have your deep threats, obviously, in Higgins and Chase, but Joe's really good at getting the ball out quickly, distributing it to the open target, whether that's his first read, second read, third read, or fourth read on little dump downs. I think he could be a really effective weapon in Cincinnati. And if I had to pick today, I think Austin Eckler will be suiting up for the Cincinnati Bengals in 2024.
Yeah, as a Browns fan, I don't like that idea at all, but it is an intriguing idea for him to go to Cincinnati. So then I would assume with that take, we finally see the Bengals move on from Joe Mixon.
Yeah, Joe Mixon in this scenario. I don't know if he's on this list too, Grant, but I don't think Joe Mixon is back. And well, real quick, before you give me your answer, right now, if you had to pick Mixon or Eckler, if you're the Bengals, who are you taking?
I'm taking Eckler any day of the week, and he fits their system perfectly, right? I mean, as you mentioned it, what is the his name's on the tip of my tongue? Very young, Chase. What is their Bengals running back? Chase Brown. We saw him late in the year, even with Jake Browning, he excelled in some pass catching scenarios. So Bengals were not on my radar. I actually, when I was putting this list together, I could see him going to Baltimore. I know Derrick Henry, maybe he's on this list, maybe he's not. I'm not going to spoil it. But you know, Baltimore also has that young, speedy running back that had that injury this year. So they might not want to go speed. I could see him wanting to go power with
Edwards, right? Or Keaton
Mitchell, I believe.
Keaton Mitchell.
Yeah. So again, speed might not go together. So they do need a big, goal line back in Baltimore. So who knows? But I'm going to go Baltimore there for Austin Eckler. The third one I did spoil it. I can see it now. Does happen to be Derrick Henry. After his last game in Tennessee last year, you saw him take the mic on the field. He gave a speech. I don't think there's any way that he's going to go back to Tennessee. Mikey, I don't know if you do or not. Maybe Baltimore is your spot for Derrick Henry, but thoughts on Derrick Henry?
I mean, he still can play. He's obviously not the same Derrick Henry that was in the MVP conversation year after year. If you want to go Baltimore, I'll go somewhere different here. How about Philadelphia? DeAndre Swift's an upcoming free agent. Their running game was so-so, but they have a really talented offensive line. I don't know if you consider them a run-first offense because Jalen Hurts, a dual threat, certainly capable in the passing game, but they're going to look to get more explosive and more physical, get back to the roots of Nick Sirianni, what he kind of built. And I knew they just brought in a new offensive coordinator. Who is the new offensive coordinator they hired? I'm drawing a blank on his name, Grant. Vic Fangio was the defensive coordinator they brought in. Who'd they bring in offensively?
Let me see. I'm drawing a blank too. It was did they bring Kellen Moore?
Oh, Kellen Moore. So it's not going to be Derrick Henry. That was a terrible pick by me. Bad job at it. Me.
No.
Baltimore makes sense. He doesn't fit in Kellen Moore's offensive system. Here, you go Baltimore. You explain why Baltimore makes sense. I'll think of an alternative.
Yeah, I mean, for Derrick Henry, right? Like I said, if you're gonna roll with Keaton Mitchell, roll with Keaton Mitchell. For third down situations out of the backfield. And again, I just mentioned, I really think Baltimore has been missing that big, tough running back. And Derrick Henry, I mean, he's big, he's huge, but he's also quick, right? So it's not like if you're signing Derrick Henry, you're completely getting rid of that speed factor. But I just think, and I know it might be just a surface level thought because it seems like a lot of people are saying Derrick Henry is going to go there. But again, I just think they need that big running back. They've had Justice Hill for a long time, but obviously he is no Derrick Henry. But for none other reason, really, Mikey, than they just need that big power back. And Derrick Henry fits that mold very, very well.
All right, I'll give you another answer here just to be different. And we're doing these on the fly, so
Yep.
there's probably some schematics that I'm missing. But the Las Vegas Raiders hired Antonio Pierce to be their head coach. One thing we know about Antonio Pierce, he's already talked about physicality. We want to physically dominate the other 16, 17 teams we play throughout the regular season. They did not extend the franchise tender to Josh Jacobs. He'll be a free agent this offseason. I think there's a chance they trade for Justin Fields. They'll certainly be in the market for a new quarterback, but whether it's Fields, whether it's Aiden O'Connell, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, which I think that ship is sailed, or another rookie, what better friend to have in the backfield to take the ease off that new quarterback than a veteran workhorse like Derrick Henry, who certainly fits the we're going to out-physical you mold that Antonio Pierce is trying to build in Las Vegas. Mark Davis likes the flashy names. Vegas, a flashy city. Henry, he's on the same tier as Nick Chubb and Christian McCaffrey over the last couple of years as the premier back in the NFL. So for the sake of this, I'll say the Las Vegas Raiders for Derrick Henry.
It's a sneaky good spot, and I like it. I would love to see Justin Fields go to Vegas. My boss is actually a very big Raiders fan. He's from Vegas, and he is pounding his fist at the table. He wants Justin Fields out there.
Well, think
Two
about,
more guys.
real quick, think about it. If they do get Justin Fields, Devontae Adams, and Derrick Henry
that's
as the
scary.
three weapons in your offense, it could be a lot worse than that. I'm not saying it's going to win you a Super Bowl, but it's certainly not bottom 5, 6 in the league like they've been for the last few seasons.
No doubt. Yeah, that is a very electrifying trio out there, potentially, if they go that route. We've got two more. They're both quarterbacks, but they're not quarterbacks that you would think of. Mikey and I for the next one. I mean, it is relevant to us, but let's go ahead and throw him up there. None other than Joseph Flacco himself. Look, I've talked about this on Twitter a little bit. I don't think he's coming back to Cleveland. I really don't. Would I love to have him back? Absolutely. There was a report that came out today from Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com that he could be a bridge quarterback in New England to sit there and start and have whoever they draft, young guy, learn. And I think that's a great scenario. I mean, imagine if they drafted like a Drake May, right? I mean, similar build. I know he's more athletic, but he's tall. He has an arm. And I think that would do Drake May some good. So I'm going to go New England here. I know Mary Kay reported it, and it actually sounds like a very beautiful idea for Joe Flacco. Even if he went to a place, say Atlanta missed out on the Justin Fields and the Kirk Cousins, I think Joe Flacco can find success in Atlanta because they have legitimately everything they need but a quarterback.
Yeah, New England, even before Mary Kay reported that this morning, I thought that made a lot of sense because of the success he had with AVP this season. Atlanta also makes sense. You look at the other teams drafting near the top of the board this year, if Chicago, I can't imagine this being the scenario, but let's say Chicago wants to sit whoever quarterback they take, maybe Chicago. I'll give you another team, and this one would hurt Grant. It sounds like Pittsburgh is comfortable going with Kenny Pickett, but if they swing out and miss on Justin Fields and they maybe push the tire, see what they got in Russell Wilson, nothing comes to fruition, could he make it a trio of AFC North teams he plays for? I'd be surprised because when Joe came on our show a couple of weeks ago, he said, I want to start. So to look at the opportunities across the league to find a starting position open, there just aren't many of them. But if I'm Joe Flacco, I'm looking at, all right, this is the guy I have to beat out to start in a place that has a quote-unquote established starter. Kenny Pickett's at the bottom of the ladder of guys I think I could beat out. Or I guess top of the ladder of guys I could beat out, bottom of the ladder in terms of their overall ability and talent. So I would hate to see that happen, but if it's not going to be New England, which I think makes the most sense, I don't think he fits into Cliff Kingsbury's offensive philosophy in Washington with whatever quarterback they draft. And I don't think in Vegas they'll be going with Joe Flacco. If they're going to go with a bridge quarterback, they might as well let Aiden O'Connell roll the dice again and see what you have from their rookie from last season. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I do think there is a chance that Joe Flacco would at least entertain a call from Pittsburgh because in his mind, he's a significant upgrade to Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitch Trubisky, but he's already gone, so you could actually take him out. But a significant upgrade over Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett in his own eyes, and I really wouldn't disagree with that.
Pittsburgh is so intriguing, man. Like, you have Mike Tomlin. He's a great head coach, proven winner. He barely has a losing season, makes the playoffs almost every year. But I still think that's going to be Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. I really do. What are your thoughts on the Russell Wilson stuff? Because I think that Sean Payton from day one just was not a fan of Russell Wilson. And I think his plan all along going into Denver was, hey, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to learn the ins and outs of Denver, see how it goes. But I think all along, even when he accepted that job, he knew Russell Wilson was not going to be there long term.
Yeah, and it was a weird pairing because they traded for Wilson, gave him this big contract. It clearly did not work with Nathaniel Hackett. So now you come in and give a coach a giant contract. And when you have an owner like they have, forget their last name, but they're essentially the founders of Walmart, or they run Walmart, whatever it is. They have Jimmy Haslam level money. You could afford to overpay to get the guys you want. And at the end of the day, in this situation, Russell Wilson's the aging quarterback. Sean Payton's in the quote unquote prime of his coaching career. They're going to choose the coach over the aging quarterback. And it never seemed to be a great fit. I thought Russell started to fall off late in his Seattle career. What made him so special early was he was, for lack of a better word, he was like slippery. You know what I'm saying, Grant? Like you can never seem to take him to the ground. He was able to extend plays, make something out of nothing. And once that kind of deteriorated from his game, he was an average quarterback. You could certainly win with him, but you weren't winning because of him. And in Denver, they just frankly haven't had the talent around him offensively or defensively to win despite his shortcomings. So I don't think it was ever the perfect marriage. Peyton has a personality that's on this side of the spectrum, and Wilson has a personality that seems to be on that side of the spectrum, and it never really came together to make magical results in Denver. And frankly, I'm not surprised. He's also like 36 and has been around the league for 12, 13, 14 years. Like I think we all assume everyone can play till they're 45 because of Tom Brady, and like Aaron Rodgers is 40, and I'm sure the average age of the quarterback will get extended a little bit, but he's no like young chicken by any means, and his talent's clearly deteriorating quicker than some of the other elite quarterbacks we've seen over the last few years extend their careers. So I don't know where he ends up. I don't think he's washed. I don't think he's terrible. But if you're relying on Russell Wilson to kind of save your season, you may want to buy another lifeboat. I don't think it's going to end very well. So we'll see what happens.
I think you just summed up Russell Wilson perfectly. I don't think I could have said it better myself. We've got one more on this list. Then we're going to get in some NBA action and go through the list of games and the spreads and over-unders for all those games. I don't think you're going to guess this one. I threw this one in here for fun. Let's put it up, Peter. Sam Darnold. Look.
Definitely did not expect this. Yeah, definitely did not expect this.
Look, I'm not this Sam Darnold believer. I don't think he's, the second coming of Jesus Christ, but when he had to play last year, he looked good, and I know everybody gets upset when you say Brock Purdy is assistant quarterback. He is not assistant quarterback, right? He is good. He makes plays. He extends plays. He made some crazy tight window throws last year, and he was a muffed punt away, arguably, from winning a Super Bowl and beating Patrick Mahomes. So he is far from assistant quarterback. And I know with Sam Darnold, right, you go in and you play in San Francisco. You got Kyle Shanahan. You've got all the weapons still. You've got CMC. You've got a defense. But I still think Sam Darnold can go start somewhere. I'm not saying he's going to win games and go, 11-5 or 12 and whatever the case is. But the Washington Commanders, when I think of Sam Darnold come up on my list as a team, look, he's not an upgrade, right? Sam Howell, it's not a downgrade. Maybe it's lateral, but same situation as New England, right? Say the Commanders do draft a young quarterback and they want to go the route of letting him sit and letting him learn. I think if you bring in Sam Darnold, I think he can still play. I really do. And if I had to pick a team, I would choose the Commanders here because I don't think they want to do what hasn't worked for them, which is you draft the quarterback and you start him right away, unless they trade up for Caleb Williams. Then there's no way Sam Darnold goes there. But if they draft Drake May or Jaden Daniels, just don't start him right away. But then again, right, you have the, what is Jaden Daniels going to learn from Sam Darnold because they're just not the same quarterback.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think Washington could be in play there. I really do.
I can tell you, yeah, Sam Darnold was not on my list of
I wanted to throw one in there that was
that is good. Yeah, okay, I'm going to say something crazy, and I'm just thinking this out in my brain, okay? Yep. This is never going to happen, but theoretically speaking, both the Jets and the Giants, I think, fit the criteria of a team that Sam Darnold would fit going back to. Now, it's never going to happen. He's never going to go back to New York. That whole relationship with him and the media there was a catastrophe. But for the Jets, you have an aging Aaron Rodgers coming off an Achilles injury. And if you're Darnold, you're looking at, okay, I want to play. I don't want to be a career backup at year 5. Where's a chance that I'm not 100% confident the starting quarterback will be able to sustain his health for 17 games? Well, maybe Aaron Rodgers coming off an Achilles at age 40 would be that scenario. The Giants, Daniel Jones really isn't ever healthy. He has 2 neck surgeries. He's had an ankle injury, a knee injury, but he's never going back to New York. So scratch them off. How about Tennessee? I'll give you Tennessee. I think Will Levis is the guy, but are they really sold on Will Levis? They made a change with head coach. They made a change in general manager last season, who I think he was the one that drafted Will Levis, but I'm not 100% on that. And Levis will be the starter, but just like I mentioned earlier with Joe Flacco thinking he could potentially beat out Kenny Pickett, if you're Sam Darnold and you're looking at the competition and you have to tell yourself, all right, Will Levis is the guy I have to beat, well, maybe that's about as good a chance I have to start as anywhere else in the league. So I'll give you Tennessee for that, but I'm just shooting fish in the barrel. I got no idea.
Even Denver, right? Sam Darnold out there.
Denver, yeah.
I know
they like Stidham though. They gave Stidham that
do.
big contract last year to be the backup. So I think they're going to draft a quarterback, and I think they're comfortable having Stidham be the backup. But that's kind of the situation you're looking for to kind of plug Sam Darnold into for next season.
Yeah, like I said, I wanted to throw one caveat, fun one in there. Are you sold? We'll touch on the Browns here real quick. Are you sold that DTR is going to be the number 2 next year? Because, why not? Why, if you're thinking backup, why not Cleveland for Sam Darnold, right? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so I think we'll go perfect world to reality. Perfect world, Joe Flacco comes back, right? That's the best case scenario. If you could draw up your ideal off season, it's Joe Flacco agrees to a 1-year, $2 million contract to come back to the Browns. I just don't think that's a realistic possibility. He's going to get more money to attempt to be a starter elsewhere. I have no issue with Jacoby Brissett coming in and being the backup quarterback. He'll cost, I think, $2-3 million, and I would be very comfortable with him as the backup. I also wouldn't hate it if Andrew Berry says, we don't have a ton. Let me preface this. They can create as much cap space as they want. If they want to restructure Deshaun, they want to restructure Miles, Nick Chubb, Amari, they can create as much cap space as they need. But maybe he's looking at the totality of their cap sheet and says, you know what? DTR is going to be our future long-term backup. Let's just throw him to the fire now. I thought he actually looked pretty good in that Denver game, Grant, before he got injured.
He did.
And that actually saved their season by him getting hurt, because that's how we got to Joe Flacco in the first place. But I didn't think he was a catastrophe by any means. So it wouldn't be my first choice to have DTR be the certified, unquestioned quarterback 2 entering 2024. But I'm also not going to freak out if that's the case. You got to remember, Josh Dobbs was supposed to be the backup quarterback entering 2023, and DTR beat him out, right? So DTR clearly proved he can play. I thought he was on the right track when he got some action in the regular season. I know that first Baltimore game was a catastrophe, but he didn't learn he was starting till 11:30 that morning. I don't put that on him whatsoever. So I wouldn't be terrified if he's the backup, but I also would not mind spending $2, $3, $4 million tops on bringing back Brissett or Joe Flacco if that's what the market dictates.
And I think they will, because I think the biggest takeaway collectively out of the NFL season last year was that the backup quarterback position is very, very, very important. So many starting quarterbacks went down. So I know you said you'd be comfortable with it. I don't think I would be if it was DTR. I don't think I would be.
Can I ask you a question, though?
Yeah, absolutely.
So of the 14 teams that made the playoffs, 12 of the 14 had their starting quarterback play at least 16 games. The 2 exceptions were the Browns and the Steelers. So at the end of the day, if Deshaun gets hurt, and this is not just the Browns, this is every team. I have this debate with Earl all the time, because Earl is gung-ho on, well, the season's not doomed if Deshaun gets hurt, if we have Joe Flacco or Brissett as backup. And I'm like, well, what do you consider doomed? I'm shooting to build a Super Bowl roster, and I want to put all my assets into making this 53-man roster, 52 guys around Deshaun Watson, as good as humanly possible so I can contend with Kansas City and San Francisco to win a Super Bowl. And if I have to sign Joe Flacco for $7 million to be the backup, well, that means maybe I'm sacrificing a pass rusher or a receiver or somewhere down the line, somewhere else. And I think if you lose Deshaun, Whether it's Flacco, I don't think he's winning you a Super Bowl. Whether it's Brissett, I don't think Jacoby Brissett's good enough to win a Super Bowl. So I think it comes down to what you consider a salvage season with the backup, Grant. And if just making the playoffs is your main concern, then I'm with you. You need to sign a Flacco or a Brissett. But if you're in the goal to win a title, win a Super Bowl, I don't think it really matters who your quarterback is after Deshaun, because I think it's a damn near impossible task to ask anyone to do it. Even though I know we saw Nick Foles do it, just because it happened doesn't mean it's going to happen on a regular basis. So that's kind of where I feel the whole backup quarterback situation lies on. What's your end goal for this team next season? If it's Super Bowl, is a backup quarterback worth a third pass rusher? For example, pick a different position if you want. Or if your goal is just, hey, if Deshaun goes down, we want to be competitive, then it is worth spending that extra money on a backup quarterback, in my opinion.
It's a great point, and it makes me, and it should make a lot of other, listeners and other football fans think. And I would, while I just did say I'm not comfortable with DTR as the only quote unquote backup, they're going to have obviously a third and probably, some guy on the practice squad, but I would rather spend that money elsewhere and commit, because it's just like, I mean, it's not like fantasy football whatsoever, but like when you play fantasy football, for example, you can't play worried and draft about, if could this guy get hurt? Could this guy go down? And to answer your question, you can use pass rusher as an example. I would absolutely rather spend those extra couple millions and bring in, an extra pass rusher or a cornerback or a wide receiver 3 or 4, whatever the case is, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yeah, honestly, I'm with you. So if that's the case, we got to roll the dice, because, again, you can't bank and worry about salary cap issues when it comes down to somebody getting hurt. So I'm with you there.
Can I say just one more thing on this? Because I don't think you're wrong and I'm not saying you, I don't think anyone's wrong if they're like, I just don't feel comfortable with DTR as a backup. I need a veteran to steady the ship. Like, I don't think that's necessarily the wrong opinion or the wrong, way to approach the situation. I just know I don't think there's a backup quarterback in football that exists. I don't think that quarterback exists that if your starter goes down is capable to be realistically counted on to go beat. I mean, look at the AFC. Joe Flacco would have had to beat CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes to reach the Super Bowl. Like, what backup quarterback is doing that? I just don't think that person exists. So to me, yeah, I think Joe Flacco and Brissett are better than DTR. But I'm also hoping that whoever the Browns' backup quarterback is never sees the field this season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just kind of look at it in a different light than having an insurance policy. I just would rather spend that money elsewhere to make sure the team is as talented as humanly possible when push comes to shove, and keep your fingers crossed Deshaun can stay healthy.
Great points, man. Yeah, I'm with you. Great points as always. You're exactly right. I mean, like, any backup that is out there in the NFL, as you mentioned, spot on again, like, they're not beating Patrick Mahomes. There's no way. And your end goal, and the Browns' end goal when you traded for Deshaun Watson, was so you can beat Patrick Mahomes. So
it's Super Bowl,
yeah. Spot on take there, no doubt. And I always think about it. Everyone says Deshaun this, Deshaun that. When we traded for Deshaun, you know what the one highlight tape was that I watched time and time again just to try to figure out what went wrong? Was that game when they were up 24-0. Watson was smacking Mahomes. I mean, they were just completely destroying him. And then shit hit the fan, went south, and they lost that game. Let's touch on Deshaun real quick. I know we're going to get into other stuff, but I've got tons of questions asked about this and how I feel. And I have strong opinions on who Deshaun is on the football field. And I still think he is that guy, and he has it. I think there's one thing that Deshaun Watson has to prove next year. Look, Deshaun Watson last year proved that he can play football. He still has it. And everybody wants to say, it was 1/2, whatever the case is. And I'm interested to get your thoughts. We can go back and forth a little bit real quick. But the Arizona game was not 1/2. It was a full game. And if it was Arizona Cardinals, sure. The Tennessee Titans game was not 1/2. It was a full game, and his stats were great. 27 of 33, I believe, 32, maybe 289 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had about a 50-yard touchdown taken off the board on Amari Cooper that was a dime, because they said he stepped out of bounds. Clearly he did not. The one bad game that he had was in Pittsburgh, and it was bad. I mean, it was a terrible game. He looked really, really bad. But again, you went out, you beat Joe Burrow. My biggest thing, Mikey, is everyone says, oh, Joe Burrow was hurt. But he was on the football field. If that was Deshaun Watson playing in that game, like, he was on the football field. He was healthy enough to play. I know his calf, he couldn't move. But if everybody wants to say, oh, he just was hurt and that's why that they beat him 24-3, then don't play. I'm a big believer and advocate. And if you're on the field, you're healthy enough to play, there's no excuses out there. You're playing. Fast forward and go back to that Ravens game. I mean, Deshaun Watson, he had a broken shoulder. His ankle was messed up. He went perfect, 14 of 14, won in the game. So I don't think it's a question. And no, when he starts playing next year, you're not going to see any comments of he's rusty from me and he needs to, take time in again and play and perform. I think he's going to hit the ground running. But Mikey, the only thing, I just think he has to prove that he can stay healthy. That's it. I don't think he has to prove that he can still play football. I just think the one thing, and everyone keeps asking me, he just has to prove that he can play 17 football games. And if it's not 17, he has to play at least 15. That's the only thing.
I mean, health is a big question. We haven't seen him play a full season since 2019 or 2020. It's been almost 4 seasons. Yeah. And, Grant, I think the one thing with Watson, and this is the whole, and maybe this transitions us to Cavs talk, but with Mobley and Garland, and I'll bring this back to Watson in 1 second. Part of what makes them frustrating is they have more in them, and you kind of expect more from them on a nightly basis, right? We've seen Darius Garland be an all-star in this league. We saw it last night. Darius Garland hit 7 threes. We've also seen 2 nights before Darius Garland have 8 points in totality. Evan Mobley some nights looks like, the second coming of Kevin Garnett. Other nights, it's hard to find him. And when you critique these players, you hold them to a higher standard because they can deliver more. Hell, if Ty Jerome was averaging 18 and 6, we wouldn't complain a damn bit, right? 18 and 6 from Ty Jerome would be miraculous. But because it's Darius Garland, we know he is more. We hold him to a higher standard. What Deshaun Watson was in Houston was a blue chip. He was a superstar. Granted, in my opinion, he's a top 3-4 quarterback for a 2-season, 3-season stretch in Houston. And what he did on a weekly basis, and I was living down in Texas for the majority of that, so the Houston Texans were the local game we got. Like, those Texans team weren't good. He was the reason they were so successful on the field, especially offensively. His last season 2019 or 2020, threw for 3,300 yards or almost 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 picks. Was that 19 or 20? I just want to make sure the year's right.
I believe that was 2019.
19.
I'm like 90% sure on that.
Well, you're looking, that was his last full season in Houston. He was incredible. He was in the same conversation as Mahomes, and that was, pre-Josh Allen becoming Allen, but he was in that top-tier echelon of the best quarterbacks in football.
So I was wrong. 2020.
It was 2020? Yeah, because then he sat out 2021, got traded to the Browns in 22.
Yep.
Then 23. Yeah, so it's been this will be 3 full seasons removed from that. But it's not a question of can Deshaun play football. He's still good. It's can he get back to that level of good? And I'm not saying the Browns need 2020 Deshaun to be able to compete. But when you made the trade hoping that's the level of quarterback play you got on a week in, week out basis, which is something the Cleveland Browns franchise, at least in the modern era, has never experienced before, Grant. And I'm telling you, if he can get back to even 80% of that, it's going to make you rethink everything you know from the quarterback position. Because I promise you, as someone who watched this up close and personal, I covered a bunch of the games down in Houston. They were on TV every Sunday. It is a night and day difference. A literal world of, it looks like you're watching JV football versus D1 high-level football when your quarterback is able to make some of the plays that Deshaun is physically capable of making. I have confidence he can still get back to that, but I think the criticisms of Deshaun have just been consistency, his ability to stay on the field, and even when he has played well, the Tennessee game was awesome. The second half against Baltimore was phenomenal. I thought he was solid against Arizona. I didn't think it was his greatest game, but he was perfectly fine against Arizona. But he didn't trade for perfectly fine. You know what I'm saying? Like, you traded for elite, and it's in him. I'm still confident he has it in him. He can find it again in 2024. Hopefully Ken Dorsey and all these new minds in the offensive playroom, Tommy Reese, Stu Staley, Stefanski, Dorsey, they could all come together to bring it out of him. But the Browns traded for elite quarterback play. You don't give up 3 first-round picks and that contract, which, by the way, good for you, Deshaun. Get every damn dollar you can earn. I wish every player in the league gets fully guaranteed contracts. Like, anyone who says that contract was bad, well, you know what? Be offered that kind of money, you turn it down. Like good for you, Deshaun, for getting your bag. But it's just getting back to the level of elite play that we saw for a sustained period in Houston that we just haven't seen here yet.
And you obviously were in Texas. You mentioned you were watching him every week. Like, the feeling that I got, when he was lighting it up in that second half against Baltimore, and that Deshaun Watson was not, I mean, you can probably speak for it better than me. I'm sure that wasn't Houston Deshaun Watson, but like some of the throws he made and when he used his legs, that reminded me of Houston. But the feeling that I got when I had that second half, I was sure, like, when the rest of that day, I was on a high as a Cleveland Browns fan
It
that
was
I haven't
amazing.
felt before.
It was
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
I was like,
Incredible.
this is what we traded for. Like, I mean, you saw the list of quarterbacks that went to Baltimore and beat Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
The list was like two names long.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I just think there's one thing that Deshaun Watson needs to prove, and I look in the camera for, and it is health. He is going to get back if he stays healthy, and he's going to play at a high level. I'm sure as hell of it, but he's got to stay healthy. And then, right, I think this is the year everyone wants to mention the contract and is it worth it and was it not? I think it is still too early to make that judgment, but this is finally the year, right? Like if he gets hurt again and he misses 6-7 games, then okay, let's talk about the contract not being worth it. But you knew when you traded for him, you were getting a suspension. You just did. So take 2022, whatever year that was, out of the picture. 2022, those last 6 games, it was, hey, Deshaun, go out and throw the football. Let's just go play football, right? 3-3 record, whatever the case is. Last year, you expected him for the full season. You can't control injuries. It was unfortunate. But again, he went 4-1. I take out the cold scam. I know sometimes I've used it, but NFL stats sheets say he's 5-1, but let's just say 4-1. So when he was healthy last year, he did do his job. Was he superstar Watson? No. He showed us a flash. But yeah, Mikey, just the one thing, let's move on. But he's just got to stay healthy. And I think that is literally all he has to prove to the fans. Obviously, he has to play football, but I just think he still has that in him for many years to come if he can stay healthy.
And to your point, then we'll talk a little Cavs. In that fourth quarter, especially the last drive, you kind of felt a calmness, like we got this, right? And at the end of the day, stats are deceiving. You could throw for a bunch of yards in meaningless situations. Stats are deceiving. I don't think he has to throw for 330 and 4 touchdowns every week to justify the fact he's back to being an elite quarterback. Look at Mahomes' stats this season, right? Like Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. That was never questioned for a second this season. His total generic box score stats were very pedestrian in the grand scheme of things. But what makes a franchise quarterback, Grant, is when you're down 7 points or you're down 4 points, down 3 points with 4 minutes left and you get the ball, your stomach isn't going down the tower of terror. And you feel kind of confident like, hey, this guy's got it. He's going to make the play when it matters. And during that Baltimore game, we all felt confident. And he proved, if you weren't feeling that confident at the time, I still got it in me. And it sucks that that's when he got hurt because we never got to see him build upon that performance. But I think that feeling we all had watching the Baltimore fourth quarter unfold was, we got a guy. And, he may not be Mahomes. No one else is. But we got a guy that in those same situations can deliver us the result that we need and we've paid for. So, Deshaun, hope you get healthy, man. We can't wait to see you back in Cleveland in week 1 or 3. And for all of us, it'll make our job so much more fun if you go out and throw for 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns, and the Browns are 13-4 next season.
That is right, Mikey. No doubt, man. Let's shift to some NBA as a whole, as well as the Cleveland Cavaliers. Man, last night I fell asleep, and I usually don't do this because I'm watching the games. I'm live tweeting.
Crazy.
And they were up 10 with 4 minutes left, and then I wake up at 6 a.m. and I see they lost in double overtime, and that wasn't even the biggest narrative of the whole night. It was that they got out rebounded. What was it, 74-38 or something like that?
Yeah, they got rebounded 35, 74-39. Terrible.
We'll get to the Cavs a little bit later on. I just wanted to mention that because I don't think I've ever seen such a differential in the rebounding category. I don't know how to say it other than it's disgusting. But we'll get into some Cavs a little bit later. Let's cover the whole slate today. Mikey, we're going to do spread picks for every game on the slate today. We'll lead it off with Bucks at Hornets. Doc Rivers, when he went to Milwaukee, they're still trying to put the pieces together there. I was shocked. I was shocked when they fired, forgive me for forgetting his name, but their head coach that they had.
Adrian Griffin.
Yeah. I mean, I was sitting at work and I saw the news and I was like, these guys are in second place of the East and you're firing your head coach. Giannis kind of gave me and is giving me, and this is no discredit to LeBron. Some people fault him for this, but it kind of gives me LeBron GM vibes there. It's like, I don't like my head coach. I'm going to try to move on, albeit when he's being really successful. The Bucks are way more successful than Darvin Ham and the Lakers this year and the past couple of years. So were you just as shocked as everyone else was when they moved on from Adrian Griffin and went to Doc Rivers?
No, only because I'd heard rumors leading up to that Giannis and Adrian Griffin were not seeing eye to eye. And despite the fact they were winning games, Grant, they had won a lot of games they probably shouldn't have won. And their defense was abysmal, and they had changed the complete shape of their defense. I mean, they always had Giannis around the paint. They always had Brook Lopez around the paint during the Mike Budenholzer era, which had been really successful for them. Griffin tried completely changing their defensive philosophy, and they were spread out away from the basket, and teams were just driving and getting to the cup at ease against them. So I had heard that there was some dissension. I didn't think it would happen that early, but I guess Doc was involved and he was ready to go. So they made the move, and I don't know if it's the right move. I'm not a huge Doc Rivers fan, man, but when your coach and your best player don't see eye to eye, it's never going to end well.
Yeah, and we know Giannis as a player, obviously he's a freak of nature, very good, but did you think that he would ever, and I'm not saying that, like, Giannis is not a diva, right? He's not, like, LeBron's not a diva, but did you ever see this coming out of Giannis? We're like, all right, he is him, and if you're not seeing eye to eye with the coach, like, did you ever, I guess what I'm saying is I did not picture Giannis to be that type of guy, and it is not a negative or knock on him. I was shocked at more of that than I was the whole coaching situation. I was just like, Giannis, I mean, this doesn't seem like it's him.
Have you ever read Giannis's autobiography?
I have not.
Well worth the read. See, like, I'm not a huge reader, and I think biographies are a lot of times kind of cheesy. This one was phenomenal. It kind of gives you a little insight onto how Giannis became who he was, his childhood, and why family's so important to him and all that stuff. But knowing Giannis from that perspective, I was surprised. Knowing the modern day NBA superstar, I wasn't surprised. These guys want to win at the highest level. It gets held against them in such a high regarding capacity now, and they don't have postseason success, that you can't afford to waste, at least in their mind, you can't afford to waste a season of your prime. And I think the way Giannis looked at it was, at this rate, we're going to lose in the first or second round of the playoffs. I'm going to get blamed for it. Like, it's not you. It's going to be me who gets blamed for it. So I'd rather get you out now and give myself a better chance to avoid that finger pointing down the road. So I guess on one hand, Grant, yeah, I was surprised. But on the other hand, I just think that's how the NBA works today, for better or worse.
Yeah, it's definitely how it works today, no doubt. Back to the Bucks Hornets game. The Bucks are 11.5-point favorites. They're on the road. It is in Charlotte. We know the story with the Hornets, right? They are 15-43, 8-21 at home. They're just not a good ball club. I'm going to take the Bucks on the road, and I actually think they might cover that spread. Look, the Hornets, as I mentioned it, right? They're just not a good team. And the Bucks are slowly, after the All-Star break, starting to put it together. They're starting to string together some wins, some solid play. So I'm going to take them to cover that 11.5. Mikey, floor is yours. Where are you going in that one? 11.5 is a lot, especially on the road.
A lot. Yeah, I kind of lean towards the Hornets just because 11.5 is a big spread for a defensive team like Milwaukee, who's been so inconsistent. But I'm pretty sure Milwaukee just dog walked someone yesterday or 2 days ago. So they're playing a little better. But I'll take the Hornets to cover. I kind of ripped Doc on the show today earlier, so I can't go back and defend him now. So I'll take the Hornets to cover. 11.5 is too many points.
So the Bucks are they are not on a back-to-back. But it is not a back-to-back, but is one of those situations we're seeing a lot more of it here in the NBA where you play the same team twice. You just have a day in between. So they just dismantled the Hornets 123-85. It was in Milwaukee. So they had a day off last night, and now they're in Charlotte.
Yeah, I like the Hornets. That makes it feel even better. It's hard to beat a team big 2 out of 3 nights, especially in a back-to-back. Or not a true back-to-back, but you know what I'm saying, a back-to-back opponent. So I like the Hornets here.
No doubt. Hopefully they took that off day and tried to figure some stuff out, because 103-85 is a bloodbath in the modern NBA day today. Most games you see, I know we see blowouts, but that's a bloodbath. Jazz Magic in Orlando. The Magic are a fun team, man. They're very fun. They're young, obviously led by Paolo Banchero. They're 6.5-point home favorites against the Jazz team led by our missed and beloved Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton, I loved him when he was in Cleveland. Like, I thought he was super fun. There was discourse about him and Darius Garland. If you're going to get rid of one, who do you get rid of? And I believe Colin Sexton is now in the starting lineup in Utah now. Hasn't he been inserted into that starting lineup? I believe he has. He's putting up some decent numbers. I'm going to take the Jazz plus 6.5 on the road. I'm going to buy in tonight to Utah and what they're doing on the road in Orlando. Vibes got to be good. Whenever you're a professional team and you get to go to Miami or Orlando or somewhere warm, especially going from Utah. You got to love it. So I'm going to take the Jazz plus 6.5 on the road against Orlando.
I'll take Orlando at home with the points only because when they have Paolo and Wendell Carter Jr. and Jonathan Isaac and the Wagner brothers, they have a ton of size. And I think it's just at the end of the day, too much size for a undersized backcourt of Utah. So I like them at home. Plus, Paolo's on a freaking roll right now, man. And he's so tough to guard.
Yes.
When push comes to shove, I just like Orlando at home in this one. They're also in a playoff hunt. I know Utah's kind of hanging on the fringe of the play-in. Orlando's in that 6, 7, 8 seed. It changes every day, but I think it's a little more important to them than it is to Utah.
It absolutely is. Orlando is 8th in the East right now. So they're right there. They're teetering on the edge. And then you've got the Jazz are right on the outside looking in. They are in the 11th spot in the West, but there's a 4-game difference that separates them and then the 10th seed Golden State Warriors. So if they want to sneak into that playoff, they've got some work to do. Taking them plus 6.5, so let's hope it starts tonight against the Magic. Hawks Nets. What are your thoughts on the Nets wanting to make, and again, Mikal Bridges is a stud, but it's been made clear, especially at the trade deadline, this season, that they want to try to, cement him as their cornerstone and build around him. Do you think that the Nets building around Mikal Bridges is something that can lead to tons of success down the road?
If he's their number one option, not a chance. But if he's their number 2 or number 3, sure. And the one thing the Nets have done is they have a ton of picks from the Kevin Durant trade, and they have a ton of 3-and-D wings on relatively affordable contracts that if they want to attach themselves into a superstar conversation sweepstakes, whether it be a Donovan Mitchell or a Karl Anthony Towns or a insert superstar who could be on the move, they'll be able to put together a pretty attractive package in terms of assets and draft capital plus young talent that fits a position of need across the NBA. So I think what they're doing is positioning themselves to make a run at a Donovan Mitchell or Cat or someone else. There could be, how the NBA works, Grant.
Don't say Donovan. I'm
just saying, how the NBA works.
No, I know.
Like a guy's happy, the next thing you know, he asked for a trade you never expected it. Maybe Jaylen Brown. Like who the hell knows? But they have a ton of assets and draft picks to be able to kind of put a Godfather offer. They turned down reportedly all of this picks that they traded Houston for James Harden to come back to Brooklyn in exchange for Mikal Bridges, which tells me they are super high on him, but he's not a number 1. Like who you fooling? He's the 27th best player in the NBA. Like you're not winning a championship with that. So you got to attach him to a top 10 guy, ideally top 15 guy. So I don't think it's like a barren wasteland of what the hell are you doing in Brooklyn. But if they swing and miss this offseason, Grant, it's going to be ugly for them. I'm telling you.
No doubt. I mean, it's already ugly enough, in my opinion. You're running out, and I know it's popular and it's common, but like if I was an NBA, if I was a fan of the Brooklyn Nets or any team that had Ben Simmons on the roster, I would just be frustrated every single day. Like, what do you like? Do you think
Ben Simmons? So my dad's a Nets fan. I got like my whole family's Nets fan. I grew up back in Jersey.
Yeah.
Ben Simmons is the most frustrating player that I ever watched. But when he doesn't play, my dad won't watch the games. Like the Nets need Ben Simmons to win. It's an incredible phenomenon that the Nets have created now where they can't count on him to play more than 1 game a month, but that's the only game of the month worth watching, if that makes sense. He's their second best perimeter defender. He's the only real point guard they have on the entire roster. He actually makes them a coherent, competent basketball team when he plays, but he literally never plays. He's beyond frustrating, and I think it's essentially a lost cause just because his body can't keep up and withstand the grind of an 82-game season. Hell, if it was a 10-game season, I'd say I don't think his body could withstand the grind of a full NBA season. So, he's certainly a flawed player, but the Nets desperately need him to be competitive. If he's not playing, I'm taking who? They play Atlanta tonight?
Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Simmons is out. Give me Atlanta in the points. I don't even care. The line can be 63. I take Atlanta minus 63. It doesn't matter. Simmons is out. They have no chance.
Trae Young is also out.
Don't care.
He has that torn radial collateral ligament in his finger, but Cam Thomas is also out for the Nets. That's another big loss. Cam Thomas is a stud. I love him.
He can score. Yeah.
He can score. He can get buckets. So when I think of Ben Simmons, and obviously this not on the same level, but like I was talking about the frustration, right? And I imagine your family and your parents had to be, uber frustrated at him playing once a month. But to try to compare the two, and again, it's not on the same scale. I'm just, this is not apples to apples, but like I think of a George Valera, for example, or a Daniel Espino. It's like these guys are supposed to be studs. And I haven't even seen him in the league. I just get so frustrated that you get the report that, George Valera's out 3 weeks because of a strain. Daniel Espino was set back for the past 3 years. And I get frustrated. And they're not even here yet. So I can only imagine a guy like Ben Simmons, who, as you mentioned, like when he plays, he is the leader and the horse that makes that engine and that team go. So I can only imagine the frustration because, again, I get frustrated when I see prospects in minors who are supposed to be studs keep getting set back and can't stay healthy. So I can only imagine the frustration that Nets fans feel when they have to deal with Ben Simmons or any team for that matter. Warriors Knicks on TNT. There's actually 2 good games tonight on TNT. Klay Thompson is officially to the bench. He has been for some time now, a week or two. Steph Curry continues to be Steph Curry. But let's talk about the New York Knicks for a second, because as you guys know, they're obviously tied to the Cavs a lot, whether it's about Donovan Mitchell or the playoff series last year or a potential playoff series this year. Without OG Anunoby, and without Julius Randle, and again, that's 2 big pieces, don't get me wrong, but they're a different team. It's like they traded for OG Anunoby, you got rid of RJ Barrett, you got rid of Emmanuel quickly, you sent them away, and, OG Anunoby, like, he hasn't even been able to shoot a basketball yet, so he's not close. And if the Knicks continue to fall down the Eastern Conference standings, I don't know. I think even if those guys do get healthy come playoff time, they're going to have some unfavorable matchups, and it could be tough for them. But Jalen Brunson is a dog. He is just phenomenal. I know they've got some pieces. They got Bogdanovich now. He's supposed to help them out. Alec Burks as well, coming back to New York from Detroit. But where are you at in Knicks Warriors? I'll give you Knicks are at home, but the Warriors are 4.5-point favorites on the road. Thoughts on the Knicks first, and then you can go ahead and make your game pick there. Again, I don't think Bogdanovich and Burks are enough to keep that team afloat without OG Anunoby and Julius Randle long term. And I feel bad for Knicks fans. Actually, I don't, because they're Knicks fans. Can't stand New York, but I just think that, again, to sum it up, they can't stay afloat with those guys on the bench long term.
Yeah, Anunoby's the big one. Randall's coming back in a couple of weeks. I'm not too worried about him. And Mitchell Robinson's expected to be back in the lineup in March. So if a Cavs-Knicks playoff rematch comes to fruition, they'll have Mitchell Robinson. They're tough, Grant, because they're a big, physical, in-your-face team, similar to what we saw Chicago do to Cleveland last night. And I know we'll talk about that in a second, but any label that you had for the Cavs after the last year's postseason disaster got right back to the forefront and brought back to fruition last night, because Andre Drummond looked like the second coming of Wilt Chamberlain on the glass. It was not enough words. So without Anunoby, I think it is an issue for them. I like the Bogdanovich acquisition. There's a chance, Grant, like their closing lineup is Brunson, who's 6 feet, Anunoby 6'8", Bogdanovich 6'8", Randall 6'9", and then Mitchell 7 foot. Like, that's just a pain in the ass to deal with from a size standpoint. And you have 4 shooters on top of that size, so it's not like you're playing just bigs. That is space and pace bigs. They're a tough matchup for any team, including Boston. That does not exclude Boston, but I don't think they're top tier. Just like I feel similar with the Cavs in this sense. If an undersized guard is your best player, it's tough to win a championship. So I don't put them in the same conversation as the Bostons, the Denvers, and some of the other top teams in the league, but they're tough. And with all that being said, I love Golden State, even on the road as a favorite. Steph Curry has not played particularly well lately, but it's Madison Square Garden. It's where he broke the record 2 seasons ago. And whenever he plays at MSG, he puts on a show. So without OG, without Randall, give me Steph Curry and the boys at MSG tonight. I feel really good about that. It's the first one I felt really good about, Grant, is telling you that the Golden State Warriors will cover tonight against the Knicks.
I love it, too. I'm right there with you. We've been split for the past couple, but I'm on the Warriors there as well. Let's talk tiers 1 second. Would you say that the Cavs and Knicks fully healthy, right? Let's assume both teams are fully healthy. You talk tiers. Are the Cavs and Knicks in the same tier, or are the Cavs in a tier ahead of the Knicks?
I think they're in the same. I think they're in the tier of, I'm naming this on the fly. Very good regular season team. I have my playoff questions, is what I put them in a tier with. And I also think Minnesota's in that tier, and Oklahoma City's in that tier. And it's not just those two, but like they're really, really good regular season teams. Can you win with 2 non-shooting bigs in the playoffs for the Cavs? Like, we'll find out this year. Can you win with 2 undersized guards? We'll find out this year. Is JB Bickerstaff a coach that's capable of out-coaching another good coach in a playoff series? We'll find out this year. So, like, as good as the Cavs have been this regular season, until I have definitive answers to some of these questions, Grant, I just can't put them ahead of some of the other teams that may have a little more definitive data. Whether their ceilings are the same, we could have that debate. I think the Cavs ceiling is probably a tad bit higher in a perfect world scenario than the Knicks, but we have more definitive answers on the Knicks. We know Brunson's the dog in the playoffs. We know they're not going to be scared of the lights, to steal Jared Allen's term. We know Tibbs can win in the playoffs. So I have a little more confidence just because we actually know the answers to those questions. But I think they're right in the same boat. I think if they play a series again, it goes 7. And I might pick the Cavs, and I might wake up tomorrow and I might pick the Knicks. Like, I don't know who I'd pick at this point.
They might see each other at some point, but I pray that it is not the first round. I don't think I can handle another Cavs-Knicks first round playoff series. But I'm with you. I would put them in the same tier. Let's go rapid fire on the next 2 games. We won't get into any of the teams, but Thunder at Spurs. The Thunder are 11.5-point favorites. And I know I just talked about blowouts. It looks like every other night when I'd look at the Spurs, checks the box score, they're 11-48. Obviously, they're not good. I don't think anybody expect him to be in the first year of Victor Wembanyama. I could talk about Victor Wembanyama for hours. I think that guy is absolutely insane. Some of the stuff I see him doing, not only on the offensive end, but defensively, is just out of this world. I'm going to take the Thunder, though, on the road, 11.5 to cover that big spread. Rapid fire, where are you going there?
I'll go Thunder, too. One thing on Wemby, Grant, my best friend, he'll be the best man at my wedding, is assistant coach for the Blazers, played basketball with him at Emerson. And every time we talk on the phone, he has some sort of Wemby scouting story. And he says, time after time after time, did you see what Wemby did last night? I've never seen that. He's worked in the league for 6-7 years now. I've never seen someone do that. And I'm like, what did he do this time? He sends me the clip. And I'm like,
yeah.
I am not the same species as Victor Wembanyama. Like, a normal human being should not be able to do what he does. So any chance they get to watch Victor, it is a must-watch opportunity. And I just hope he can stay healthy, because if he does, Grant, it could change the league forever. Seriously.
I'm with you. Spot on. I don't think that is it is a strong statement, but it is an accurate statement at the same time. And they just extended Greg Popovich again too, didn't they?
Before the season, yeah, he's got, I think, 4 years left now. So
crazy. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm gonna go Thunder, but Victor Wembanyama, I could talk about him for a whole show.
Take all the Wemby overs and then bet the Thunder to win the game.
There you go. Rockets, Suns. It is in Phoenix. The Suns are 8.5-point favorites. The Suns are 34-24. Kevin Durant we talked about this yesterday with Max. I wouldn't say he's one of the best players of all time, but I would say he is one of the best pure scorers of all time. I love the addition of Royce O'Neal in Phoenix. I think that's going to go a long way for them. I'm going to take the Suns at home to cover that 8.5. I'm all about big spreads, and that team that's favored to cover that spread tonight. So I'm going to keep the common theme. Rapid fire, I'm going to go Suns to cover there.
I'll take the Rockets getting 8.5 points. They're scrappy, and at the end of the day, I don't think Phoenix's defense is all that great. So I think they win, but I like the Rockets to cover.
Heat Nuggets, the second half of our doubleheader on TNT. I'm going to take the Heat plus 6.5 on the road. The Nuggets are a great team. They're really good at home. But I think there's some fuel under Jimmy Butler in the Miami Heat. Right now, 33-25. I'm taking the Heat on the road plus 6.5.
I don't know if this is the first time they've met since the finals last year.
I don't think it is.
I know how that Jokic-Bam matchup went in the finals, and I have a hard time betting on the Miami Heat to stop what Denver does. Give me Denver 6.5 at home.
Lakers, Wizards to close out the NBA slate, and then I got a couple Cavs questions for you to close out. Lakers are 9.5-point favorites. The Wizards suck. Like, every time, I think you were just talking about this too, talking about the Washington Wizards in one of your Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show live shows that are weekly. The Wizards suck. Jordan Poole sucks.
Yeah,
Kyle Kuzma he's average. He is elite every time he plays Cleveland.
Yeah.
But on a night-to-night basis,
they're not good.
I know he's the number one op. Yeah, they're not good at all. I will say, though, it's tough for me to, like, this could be a spot where Vegas and the books make a lot of money because the Lakers were just in that crazy game last night where LeBron dropped 34, 19 in the fourth quarter. He's going to be gassed. He is LeBron James. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the Wizards I'm taking the points to cover on the road against the Lakers. That could be one that backfires, but I don't like back-to-backs, and I don't like LeBron having to do a ton against the Wizards, albeit it is the Wizards, after what he did, what was phenomenal against a really good Clippers team last night.
I'm rolling with you. LeBron made 7 threes last night. I'll take the under on his 3-point total. I'll take the under on the Lakers, and I think the Wizards cover. That's a lot of minutes to play, a lot of high-intensity minutes as well in the fourth quarter to come back the very next night against an old Lakers team. Plus, the Wizards can score. They play no defense, but they can score. So that's a lot of points for a team that can light it up offensively against the Lakers team that decides to play defense once a week.
Yeah, they don't play defense very consistently, very often. And I'm with you. I mean, LeBron, as we know, right? He's old. He is a stud.
Amazing.
He is amazing. But if you hit 7 threes and your name's LeBron James the next night, I love the undertake there. You're probably going to hit 1, maybe 2 if you're lucky.
What I'm hoping, Grant, is they're up 32 points at half and he just plays 4 minutes in the second half. Like that's what I hope.
For sure. Let's close with 2 Cavs questions. As you guys know, Mikey Big Nuggets of UCSS. If we could have Mikey on every day, we would. Mikey, love you. Fantastic stuff. 2 Cavs questions to close. Number 1, I'm going to use last night as an example, and I love it because it's perfect. Does what happened last night, what we saw, does that make you concerned? What I'm not going to say doesn't make you concerned because I think it does, right? But on a scale of 1 to 10, what level of concern does that give you long-term for the rest of this season in the postseason this year? What happened if they don't go out and get another big body big to fill the void? I know they have Tristan Thompson coming back, so that might help. But what level of concern, 1 to 10, does what happened last night give you going forward for the rest of the year?
Oh, it is definitely a concern. I mean, last night in particular, I'm not too worried about, but it's a trend. You saw what happened in the Knicks series last postseason, and they got labeled with they got a soft label from that. Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein, and Julius Randle, frankly, bullied them. And last night, the Bulls went with a 2 big starting lineup. They started Andre Drummond next to Nikola Vucevic for the first time all season. That hadn't happened. And guess what had happened? Guess what the result was? It was 40-something rebounds between their 2 bigs. Drummond had 26 by himself. Vucevic had 13. Jared Allen had 4. And that's simply not good enough. And when you're going to play the 2 bigs, Grant, from a Cavs perspective, the advantages of playing 2 bigs are you should dominate the glass and it should be very hard for opponents to score in the paint, right? Especially when they're not shooting bigs. Like you sacrifice the shooting if you're getting elite rebounding and defense. And last night, well, you didn't get – Mobley played a very good game. Allen played like crap, but you didn't get what you needed from a 2 big lineup. And frankly, what Chicago did to you is what you would hope to do to other teams. But Mobley and Allen aren't built like Drummond and Vucevic. You know what I'm saying? So it is a little bit of a concern that I still think the Cavs – I don't want to say they're soft, but they are vulnerable to big, physical, tough teams taking advantage of them on the glass. And when push comes to shove in the playoffs, it's a different game than the regular season. Everybody's more physical. And before last night, I felt very, very, very good. 3 varies in a first-round potential matchup against Orlando, despite the fact Orlando has a big front line. I only feel 2 varies now about that matchup against Orlando because in that first game out of the break, you saw Mo Wagner kind of bully the Cavs front line. And I'm worried now that could be the blueprint again. They had kind of gotten away from it. They kind of quieted the whispers of this team may be soft. But after what happened last night, it has certainly kind of creeped back into the vernacular when describing the Cavs. And when the playoffs come around, they have to prove they've toughened up, that they're more physical. They're capable of handling physical bigs on the glass, or teams are going to send 4 or 5 guys to the offensive glass every single time. And it's really, really, really tough to win when you get out rebounded by 35. Frankly, the fact they went to double overtime last night, despite getting out rebounded by that margin, was a win in its own right. So it was an ugly loss last night, Grant, for sure. And it certainly is a trend worth watching over the final 26 games. Can Cleveland man up and control the glass with 2 bigs? Because if they can't, there's no point in playing those 2 together. There's no benefit that outweighs the negative of having 2 non-shooting bigs if you're going to get crushed on the glass. That is what it is.
I remember when our Cleveland Cavaliers had Isaiah Hartenstein on their roster, and I would watch him night in and night out, and I was like, this guy is not it. But I love admitting when I'm wrong, and man, was I wrong. And I think Isaiah Hartenstein would go a long, I'm going to give you 3 longs, a long, long way on this Cavs roster right now.
It'd be a really good fit for sure. Yeah.
The last question as we close is going to be this one. And Mikey, I apologize for asking you this question in advance. I just want to clip and put it on Twitter just to see people react to it. We don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to ask you this today, February 29th, 2024. Next year, I'm not even going to say next year, in 2 years, right? In 2 years, Mikey, will Donovan Mitchell be a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers?
I mean, like,
it's not an easy
I mean,
question.
like,
I
who
know.
knows? I think it all. Here, I'll give.
What
If you want a
does
social
your
clip,
heart tell you?
I'll give you a social clip. JB and Donovan's futures with the Cleveland Cavaliers are directly tied to their postseason outcome in this season. If they get bounced in the first round, I think JB gets fired, and I think it's very, very likely that Donovan Mitchell could request a trade. If they make it to the second round and get bounced, I think it depends on the circumstances of what happens to determine their futures. If they make the third round, the Eastern Conference Finals, make the finals, JB Bickerstaff's getting an extension, and Donovan Mitchell would be silly to ask to go anywhere other than Cleveland. I don't care what fans say. I don't care what anyone else in the media says. I believe Donovan when he says, I'm going to make the best decision for my future based on the best basketball situation around me. And right now, it's a pretty damn good basketball situation around Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland. There are still a lot of questions to be answered this postseason. Can him and Darius coexist in the sense of winning playoff series? We know it works in the regular season. Can it exist to win postseason series? Can you win playoff games and playoff series with two non-shooting bigs? Is JB Bickerstaff the right coach? These are all questions that have to be answered that will be impossible to answer until April, May, and June when the Cavs are in the postseason. But I think both Donovan Mitchell's future with the Cavs and JB Bickerstaff's future as the head coach of this team are dependent on how the Cavs perform this postseason. If it's bad, would not surprise me to see both of them gone. If it's good, I'd be shocked if they're not back here next season, and probably, at least in Donovan's case, for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons.
Is one you might have mentioned this in your response. Is one playoff win a round enough to keep them?
I think it totally depends on how they like. If they make it to the second round and lose on a Game 7 buzzer beater,
yeah, for sure.
Who knows? If they lose like they did to the Knicks, but in the second round, yeah, change is probably coming. I would guess. Like, I'm just purely speculating, but I think the second round, it depends on the fashion of which they lose. If they get mollywopped, it's going to be tough to convince these guys to come back. If it's a damn close series and they're, one role player away, I mean, how many better situations can you find than a Darius Garland next to you, than Evan Mobley, than Jared Allen, and you got Max Strus under contract, and Niang. Like, it's already a deep team. You theoretically be adding Amani Bates in a year or two. So it's not like the Cavs are a bad basketball situation. They may just be one player short of being a true championship contender. And you can find that in an offseason. But we're not going to know the answers to those questions until the postseason rolls around.
All right, Mikey, I appreciate it. And I will say this, the grass to Donovan Mitchell, you know it. Everyone knows it. You know it too. The grass is not always greener on the other side. And if you want to go home and just play because it's New York, so be it. I get it. But I think Donovan Mitchell genuinely and truly cares about winning basketball games. And the grass isn't always greener. You mentioned you got all these guys under contract. So it's going to be interesting. And I don't think the pressure on this playoff season for the Cavs is just, I'm not going to say it's bigger than it ever has been in history, but it's up there. It is up there. So, for Mikey, appreciate you having you on, man. Always a pleasure.
Anytime.
Good luck in the future. I'm sure we'll be in touch. Anything you need, always let us know. I think you texted me you were hooping tonight, so go drop some buckets.
Yeah. Got to get some buckets tonight. Don't worry.
Absolutely. All right, Mike, we appreciate you, and we'll see you guys tomorrow back at same time, 6 p.m.